So we're just about to ice fishing season, and we're going through the steps you need or the things you need to be aware of, think of gear, what have you, for those of you who want to get started in ice fishing. This is John Young with the Weekend Sportsman. Today we're going to be looking at the things you need to go ice fishing. Now, ice fishing is in some ways a lot less expensive than summer fishing, and in some ways it can be very expensive depending upon what you're wanting to do with this. What we're going to do in this video is we're going to look at a lot of the pieces that you would need to go out there and go ice fishing, and we're going to kind of cover the basics. This is for the beginning person who's never done it before and it's like, you know, it's going to be a beautiful week this weekend, that type of thing, and you're like, you want to take the kids out. This is something you might go maybe look at before you head out to hopefully help you. We've got 12 videos in this series, and the playlist will be down. The link for the playlist will be in the description of this video, so you can go check it out. So let's get started. The first thing you want to do is you want to be thinking safety. There's a lot of different things when you're going out onto the ice that you need to be aware of. Some of it could be cleats for your shoes. It might be ice picks in case you happen to break through, that you can use the ice picks to go and pull yourself back out. And it might be something as simple as having a flotation device. A lot of this is going to depend on the time of year. If it's early season ice or late season ice when there's more of a chance of breaking through, that could be a problem. Or if you're going to an unknown area and there's no one else around, then you definitely want to prepare for the worst, because that could happen. But if you're going to an area where you're mid-season and a lot of people are out there, you're probably not going to have to worry too much about having some of these things, but it's always a good idea to be prepared. So the first thing you're going to need to do is find a way to make a hole. An ice auger is probably the best way. This particular one from HT Enterprises would be my recommendation. It's something simple, not very expensive, but it's going to be something you can use from 2 inches of ice up to about 2 feet of ice with a little bit of upper body work, but it's not horrible. It's probably one of the easiest hand augers out there. There's a variety of different augers you could use. You can go to battery, you can go to gas, you can do propane. There's just a lot of things out there. But getting started, a hand auger is probably the best way to go. Next, after you drilled the hole and you've got all that slush, you can kind of flush it out by pulling the auger up and down a little bit, but you're going to need to scoop the ice away. Now, some people will want to have a scoop shovel, so that's a little bit different. That's an actual scoop shovel to go and clear the ice away before you start drilling, but once you're done augering, you're going to have this mound of ice. You can use your scoop shovel to move it out of the way. You don't really need to have it. You can kick with your boots, and you might get your boots a little wet, so be it. But you're going to need some sort of a little ice scoop to scoop out the ice crystals that are in the hole. And you may need to have that so you can keep the hole open while you're fishing for the night. There's a variety of different types. You can use there's some plastic version, there's some metal versions. Just a simple scoop, but it needs to be one that isn't going to break if it's out and getting sub-zero weather at some point in time during the season. There's a variety of rods and reels available. There are a lot of ice fishing combos where they're talking a 20-inch rod and a reel, and then you can go up from there. Some people are fishing on the Great Lakes and using long rods. Some people, like myself, I fish in smaller enclosures, so I want a little bit smaller rod. The length of the rod really is going to depend on the size of the fish, and we're going to go into that more in detail on the rod and reel section of the video. But expect, if you're going to be getting started, you can go something kind of simple where it's the old stick style where you wrap the line around and there's no reel included. Those are just a few dollars. Or you can go all the way up to a very expensive, but just a simple little combo, 24-inch combo, 27-inch combo with a reel, an open face reel, can set you back somewhere between $20 and $30. You can find these at your local bait shops for an incredibly low price, or you can find them at some of your big box stores. Next, we're going to talk jigs. Jigs and lures. What are you going to basically put on the end of your line, which we need to talk about the line too. But the jigs, are you going to be after panfish and you're going to want to have like little ant type jigs, little glow jigs, the tiny ones, or you're going to be going after pike, northern pike or walleye or something a little bit larger where you need a larger hook and a larger jig. Those are going to be something you kind of figure out in advance, because you're not going to take the huge jigs that you'd use for walleye and go after perch or to go after crappies or sunfish. You generally need to kind of match your jigs and hooks up with what you're headed for. So just keep that in mind as you're going forward. We're going to do a whole section on what type of jigs you should have or what type of lures you should take with you when you're going fishing. Let's talk about that fishing line. There's a variety of different fishing lines, and we're going to do a full show on that, but you want to basically get fresh. That's really what I'm going to mention here, is if you buy a brand new combo for the season, you're probably going to be okay and you could use the line on it, although it may not be the greatest line, but for getting started, it'll probably be fine. But if you're coming at, every year, that, last year's line. Some people like to go and change the line each and every year. The best way to do that is to take the line and literally grab it, kind of wrap it around a little bit and just kind of pull. If it's 6-pound test or more, it shouldn't snap very easily. If it's 2-pound test, it might snap pretty easily, but you should still be able to pull and feel some pressure. And we'll go into more detail on that, but you want to make sure when it comes to line, you're using the right kind of line, whether it's monofilament or braided, depending upon what you're fishing for. And you want to make sure that it is fairly fresh line, especially in the monofilament world, that it doesn't start to get fragile over the time. Next, bait. When you're out fishing, you can go baitless. You can use artificial scented baits on your jigs, or you can go with a bait. That could be some sort of a worm, a grub, a larva type of wax worm. It could be a Euro larva, some of those little tiny bugs, buggy, squirmy worms you've seen. Or you might go into live bait with minnows. Those are the two main ones we use here in Minnesota, between waxworm for panfish and we go minnow for larger fish, whether it's walleye, pike, or getting into even some bass. We can do that in winter also. Variety of different types of bait out there. We're going to go into more detail in our bait video, but you're going to probably want to have some fresh bait when you're going out fishing. Now, some waters, they will use frozen or freeze-dried bait, and it can have a level of success depending upon what waters you're in. But for most of the time, you can go to your local little bait shop, get some fresh bait, whether it's a little thing of waxworms, or you can go and get a dozen or scoop of minnows or something, and you're good to go. Again, more details on specifics in our bait video coming up. Next, when you're out on the ice, you've drilled the holes, you've got your rods and everything ready, and now you need to have a spot to sit. You can do something as simple as a folding chair, or you could use a 5-gallon bucket. A lot of people use that, putting a special lid on it that's padded, or you can go all the way up to using some really fancy things in your fishing shelter. But having a way to sit and take the weight up, because you really don't want to sit on the ice, because you sit on the ice, your snowsuit is going to kind of melt through a little bit, you're going to get wet, and once you're wet, you're cold and you're done. So figure out a way, and that's why that 5-gallon bucket idea is so great, is because you can use the haul gear out there, and once you're there, you can take the gear out and you can sit on the bucket, and then you have something to haul any fish you catch back in with you. So let's talk shelters. Shelters can be anything from, some people in late season will sit in their car and fish from their car, and that becomes their shelter. Some people have just set up a kind of a windbreak, kind of a part of a tent that's just to get them out of the wind, or they'll hide behind a car or a different fish house. Then you get into the flip-up type fish houses and the wheel fish. There's just so many different types of shelters. If you're just getting started, it might be one of those things that you kind of hold out on a shelter. If you're just kind of getting into it, there's some that you can find out on the marketplace and different places like that you can buy a used shelter fairly inexpensively. Even at the beginning of the season, people are wanting to upgrade, and they want to get rid of the one so they can get into a new one, so you can find something. But you've got the flip-over ones where you sit on the seat and you flip it over, that can handle up to 3 people across. Then you've got the kind where it's more like a tent, where it pops up, and then you kind of move around more inside and have your seating, buckets, whatever, inside it. Each one has their positives and negatives. So if you're looking at a flip over, or if you're looking at kind of the hub style house, which is the other one, those are your portable options. And then of course it can go up to the RV versions, which are about $25,000, which you can also use in the summer. But shelter is something we'll get into more detail and look at specifics in our shelter video. If you're in some sort of shelter, keeping warm is going to probably be something of interest. For most of the little flip-over shelters, if you have sun outside, it's going to keep that inside fairly comfortable. I've been in shelters where it's been 15 degrees outside, just a slight breeze, and I haven't had to have any heat inside. There was enough sun hitting it that just kind of made enough warmth in there that I was comfortable for most of the day. Once the sun went down, I had to add a little heat. That can be added with a white gas lantern, which is kind of the old way we did it. It could be by having a little propane heater, and there's a variety of different propane heaters. We'll go into more of that when we get into some of the different pieces of heating your shelters, when we get into that shelter discussion. But just keep in mind that sometimes when you're out on the ice and such, you just, it's one of those things, you're going to get a little cold. You're not going to have 70 degrees unless you've got a big house. So prepare for the cold, and that way if you aren't as cold, yay. But if you get one of those nights where the fish are biting and the temperature drops quickly, you're going to be able to stay out there until the fish bite is over. And finally, lights is another area for people who are out there fishing. Fish tend to bite. Some will bite during the day. Some of the walleye type things and crappie will bite as it's getting dusk and maybe a little bit after dark. And some lakes, they've got a better night bite than they do a day bite. So lights are an important thing. Now, a lot of the lights can be run off something, these little battery packs where they've got the lithium batteries in here, and you can go with that. I mean, this is one of those from Energized Outdoors. It's a 12-volt battery, lightweight, but it can run LED lights for days, literally. There's options like that. You can have your cordless tool lights with you. There's different options. Propane, there's some propane lights that can be added that'll give a little heat and light. Back in the day, we had white gas lanterns that threw heat and light. So there's a variety of different things you can use to be able to see. But the idea is to have a couple of light sources, and one could even be a flashlight in your pocket. So that way, if one of them, the batteries die unexpectedly quick, you've got something to see as you're trying to pack out. There's nothing worse than getting home and realizing that you forgot your ice auger on the lake because you couldn't see, because your lights were all dead. So that was just a few of the things you're going to kind of need to be thinking about as you get into your fishing experience. These are some of the things you may need to have at some level. You may not need to have the highest end at this time, but it's something that you may want to have to get yourself out on that lake. We're going to go through all of these topics in detail in the other videos in our Getting Started with Ice Fishing series here from the Weekend Sportsman. And if you have any questions, please put those down into the comment section down below, and we will definitely do our best to answer those for you. This is John Young with the Weekend Sportsman. Thank you for watching.